fine. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It is 10, and we're going to get started. If you've noticed, if you have a copy of the agenda, if you didn't pick one up, they're at the back table. So we're going to try to do our best to stick to this time frame, just because this meeting room is used for multiple things in the district, and so we have to make sure we're out of here ready for the next group that needs to come in. So I'm going to be real. I'm gonna be a real stickler on time today, so I'm gonna do my best to pay attention to everything.
I mean, you can't help but leave here positive after that, and add some brownies to it, right? Yeah. So you leave here on a sugar high and the other high. So thank you guys for all you do. Y'all are really going to enjoy listening to Jen today. She is so positive and has so much great information on our standards. I think you're going to be very pleased with that. But I just very happy to be here. And, you know, we are really focusing on good, positive relationships. You know, that's the strength of our district. I think no matter what, I think we just like working with each other. We like working with our parents and our students. And, you know, this has been one of those years where we really have to kind of step back and say, what's really important? Yeah, you know, school grades and all that's important, but we've got to stick together during this real difficult time. And I think that's helping us get through a lot of this stuff. So especially bringing our parents together and listening to their concerns and listen there. Sometimes some of them brag on us sometimes, and we like to brag on you guys. So and actually you're bragging a little bit today. So
she's awesome.
Yeah. Made me want to go get a brownie after I heard that. So yeah. So thank you all for being here. I just want to mention a couple of things real quick. And I know Ashley shared with you last time about some of the stuff about our strategic plan, but I do want to talk about a couple of dates. I want you to keep it in mind. On November the 8th at night, and that's like a couple of weeks from now, we're actually going to do a community-wide forum. And I believe it's going to be, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're going to be in here and virtually, and we're going to have as many people around our community as possible. And we're going to have some people present, especially I know we've had some people ask us about the COVID situation. And I think we're going to have Kenna Foster, our health coordinator, to be available to answer questions. It'd be one of those things where you can probably send questions in via chat, because with so many people, you kind of have to kind of organize it a little bit. But we want to be able to listen to the entire community and just listen to any concerns or whatever. I think that's something we really need to work hard at, is really reaching out and engaging our community more. I mean, I think we have done a good job with that, but I think we need to do an even better job. As a matter of fact, next week, we're actually going to have, good morning, we're going to have high school students come in and meet with me. It's going to be a student advisory committee meeting with the superintendent. And we're trying to really have a diverse group of kids come in. They're coming to the district office, hey, to get out of class for a little while. But we're actually going to do a book study. I love book studies. And we're doing a book study that's specifically designed to focus on young people's leadership skills. It's through John Maxwell, and I think it's going to be really helpful, but we're trying to develop leaders among our students in our schools. And I think that's important for students to have that voice and to be able to kind of have kind of their hand on the pulse of what's going on, both in the school community and what's going on outside the school community. So we're really big on trying to develop our future leaders, because one day they're going to be working and paying taxes and taking care of us old people. So we got to make sure we're raising them right. Third thing I want to mention is on November 9th, the school board meeting, which would be the only school board meeting scheduled for November, we're actually going to have the state of the district presentation. And that is a practice I established my first year in office, just to give our community an update on everything going on in our district. It's going to be a little bit different this time, because we're going to actually look at our strategic plan and give everyone an update on our strategies so far with our strategic plan. And that'll be kind of the course that we go. But if you'll tune in or come to the meeting, I think it'll be very informative. And I just want to look forward to your reactions, your questions about things that we're doing, but that'll be kind of an update for our board. So again, just want to give you a brief snippet on what's going on. Very happy to be here. By the way, I don't know if Ms. Hickenbotham mentioned, but we have something. Do you want to mention on October 28th? Or are you going to mention that later? Or?
No, it wasn't on the agenda, but yes, it is October 28th. It's Lights On After School, and it is a national promotional event by the After School Alliance, where they want to promote the success of and continuation of after-school programs. It really prepares students for jobs, for college, for other, experiences that help them stay in school, but also, pursue those careers in college and things like that after school. Keeps them off the street.
Yeah.
And gives them a positive and healthy environment in which to pursue those things. So the whole gist of the event is for them to, everybody to keep your lights on, to keep and continue with the funding for after school programs.
And that's October 28th.
October 28th. Yes.
Thank you, Michelle, for mentioning that. A couple other things. This is also Principal Recognition Month. So if you want to send a nice little note to your principal and just thank them for what they do. And we had them together yesterday in a meeting, and we took a picture of them. And also, I want to mention, this is a personal thing, but this is also Rhett Awareness Month. And you're probably thinking, what is Rhett? It's Rhett Syndrome, R-E-T-T, and you can Google it. It's Rhett Syndrome. It's it's kind of a degenerative disease that affects little girls. As a matter of fact, my granddaughter has been diagnosed with that. She's 6 years old. But she's thriving. She's in school now, but essentially she has regressed and has lost control of her hands and cannot speak. But you know what? She's still a little girl inside that wants to be able to communicate and do things other kids want to do. So using assistive technology, we have devices that helps her communicate. We actually have what we call a Toby, which is kind of like a laptop on steroids. And it has eye gaze technology. And this is really cool. She can look at icons on that laptop and it will talk for her. So she can actually order a cheeseburger and tell us everything she wants on her cheeseburger by looking at the different ingredients. So I think that's cool.
That's amazing.
And we also have a robot we're experimenting with that will actually feed her. We'll scoop up stuff and feed her. So actually she's Mikey Helms' niece. So Mikey definitely has an interest in that too. So just want to make you aware of that. And, our Kiwanis Club at the Azula City, we actually collect money that goes to Rhett research. So they're looking for a way to try to, cure this disease, but I just want to make you aware that that is going on. So with that, welcome. Looking forward to a great meeting. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Can I ask 2 questions
Sure.
really quick?
Sure.
The senior meeting, I'm assuming you're pulling seniors from all of our schools?
Yeah, they're more than seniors. They're actually, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are secondary students 7 to 12. Is that correct, Ashley? That's correct. Yeah. So it includes seniors, but not just seniors.
Just not just limited to seniors.
That's correct.
And then, okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And then the community forum, do you want, is that geared more to just COVID questions or is
No.
that just open?
And Ashley, jump in on that, but that's going to be, and we're going to push that information, but that's going to be open. Good, great questions. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
What time would that be again? Okay, 6:30 PM on this. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen, and thank you, Ashley McCool, for being here and speaking on behalf of the district and giving us updates. I'd like to introduce now our Director of Federal Programs, Dr. Melissa Coleman. And I'm gonna let her just say a few
Sure,
words.
absolutely. Well, good morning. I don't have anything prepared. I just wanted to welcome you all as we do every year. We enjoy having our parents come and join with us on school matters. We're very proud of the work that you all have done in the past with our parent and family engagement plan and all of our parent activities in our schools. So we're glad you're here. Hopefully we'll schedule some people to come into these meetings throughout the year to kind of give you updates on everything that's going on in our school district. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. And to kind of piggyback on what she was saying, remember this, for those of you that were here at the last meeting, we did a survey. So we had, if you had some interest of hearing different speakers or had some questions, then you could put that in the survey. But we also have the parking lot, which I moved over here. So remember, if you have any questions that you just need to ask, use the sticky note right on there. If you leave your name and a phone number and email at the bottom, I will get you in contact with the person that you need to speak with in regards to that specific question. And so any of those, feel free to leave those at the end of the day with the sticky notes on your table, and of course, suggestions. So if you have suggestions for the meeting, for November's meeting, if you want to hear anyone in particular, if you want to hear more about 21st century after school, I know I have Take Stock in Children. We were talking before the meeting started. So if you just have someone that you want to come and speak more about what they're doing, just let me know and I'll be glad to reach out to them and get them on one of the meetings in the future. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Azula. She's the Director of Teaching and Learning. So yeah, I'm sorry. I think I keep getting too close. So it's just getting right here, not my face. I just slowly scoot closer and closer.
Oh, look.
Yeah.
Well, you can stand right here.
Oh, except I just touched it.
You broke it.
I touched it and I broke it.
No, I think she's still gonna.
Are you going to be over there anyway?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I just wanted to make
All
sure.
right. Perfect.
I might need to in a minute. So Jen, I'm gonna advance it, right? Or you got? I got it. I got the clicker. So hopefully we'll be good. Let's see. Let's make sure this is. Oh, okay. Actually, I'm thinking, I don't know if it's gonna catch my sensor. She can click you. How's that? I am, and when I come around this way, it hits me, but when I'm around this way, it does not. Okay, let's try again. Yeah. I can certainly go advance it for you.
I may have you just do that. Let's
I would
see
love
if it work magic. I've settled on this clicker because I've heard my machine is pretty finicky and does not like, oh, wait. All right, now that we have tech figured out, and hopefully now I'm not just getting my neck here. We're going to talk today about the best standards. And please know that while we could have addressed a million different topics, I've decided to stick on one that I've gotten the most questions about most recently. And so as I've had the great opportunity of talking to parents either by text or email, sometimes I get those great Facebook messages that pop up. Other times it's just seeing them in Publix in the produce aisle or wherever. This tends to be the question that I get the very most frequently. So I thought we'd start there, but please know, hey, Pete, it's so good to see you out here too. Please know that I will be back in front of you again, and I will bring additional information. So this is a starting place, but I have the great honor of serving with the team of Department of Teaching and Learning. So we do so many different things as they pertain to core instruction in our district that I promise to come back many more times to share updates on other things as well. But today we're going to start with this idea of the best standards. So let's talk really quickly about where we've been in the state of Florida with standards. Standards seems to be the one thing that gets a lot of different stakeholders interested, engaged. We want to know what's going on. What are our kids supposed to be learning? So I'm going to take you back with me on a journey to my early years teaching in this district. I actually started in 1998, believe it or not. I'm telling my age here. And in 96, that was the very first year that in the state of Florida, teachers were beginning to be required to instruct based on standards. And that first iteration of standards was affectionately termed the Sunshine State Standards, right? Some of us may remember those days. In 2005, we had a morph because in public education, things change all the time, right? Those who've been in it or who have had kids in it a while, you understand this. In 2005, we had our next generation Sunshine State Standards. That was the beginning of the change. In 2010, we took a turn and went with the Common Core standards and adopted those throughout the state of Florida. Finally, in 2014, which was our last set of standards, we morphed again into what we call the Florida standards, which brings us to where we are today, the best standards. And those best standards, that actually is an acronym for the benchmarks for excellent student thinking. Now, my teacher heart gets super excited when I see standards that are in the name, you're capturing student thinking, because that's the most important piece, right? What are our students being asked to think about and do with their learning? So I love this idea of benchmarks for excellent student thinking. And you may have noticed on this previous slide, I said, thank a teacher. Remember how I said things are always changing in public education? I cannot overstate that enough. So I couldn't keep going without saying, if you have a teacher in your life, your children's teacher, a family member who's a teacher, or you're just very involved and love all things school, when you see a teacher, thank them, because with change comes an awful lot of work.
Jerry,
every
you can make
single
this
time.
available if they wanted a copy of the PowerPoint.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Just so you.
Yeah,
I know you're
especially these timelines and things, this will be helpful. So when you think about these best standards for student thinking, for excellence in student thinking, here is our current timeline. And you may notice in the top corner, I did not name it this. The state actually, in their first dealings with us about these standards, they were sure to point out that this is the most aggressive timeline and transition in the history of standards. From all the way back in 96, from the time these were written to the time they sought feedback to getting them in place in schools, we have been on a very tight timeline. And I'm going to add to that, that we did all of these pieces. We started this transition in the middle of a global pandemic as well. So when I say thank a teacher, I'm going to say again, thank a teacher, because they are incredible and they are what makes all of this work. So you'll notice here we are in 21, 22, and this year, based on the Florida timeline, we should have started implementing best standards for ELA in K through 2. Now, here's an important subtle difference that we've done here in Putnam. In Putnam, because we understand that this year it was supposed to only be K through 2 for ELA, but if you follow along the chart to what happens next year, it's everybody, ELA and math. Because we knew what a lift this was going to be with all of the other challenges, we've opted to not only move K through 2 into the best standards, we've also begun to shift 9 through 12 into the new best standards as well. Make sense? Okay, and part of that is because we didn't want teachers to feel so overwhelmed with these shifts that now I'm being asked to shift everything all at one time. So we have opted as a district K2 ELA and 912 ELA. Before the end of this school year, and you may have noticed this on our year at a glance documents, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, but before the end of this school year, we will begin shifting our 7th through 8th grade ELA teachers and our 3rd through 6th grade ELA teachers. Our goal is to give them the last quarter of this year so that they have an opportunity to learn, and I'll use the phrase, get their feet wet, so to speak, with the new curriculum and the new standards before they are required to implement fully next year. So when you look at your child's year at a glance, you may have wondered, why is there nothing on that 4th quarter? That was intentionally done so that we would have time to solidify our learning so that we could then support those teachers, making sure that this transition is not as overwhelming as it could be if we didn't give them that time and space to do that. So you'll also notice on this screen, not only does it address the standards implementation timeline, but we also have when will the adoption cycles happen for each of these sets of materials? When will new assessments come into play for our grade levels? So beginning next year, you probably heard the recent announcement that in K through 8, the state is moving and beginning to implement a brand new progress monitoring system starting next year in K through 8. That's ELA and math. We don't have a lot of clarity about that yet, beyond just that it's coming, okay? As we know more, I promise we will share more. Right now, we know it's on its way. We also know that in 9th and 10th, there will be a new assessment. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. That's morphed a little over the last 12 months or so. What started off as the state really promoting a more national assessment for 9th and 10th, meaning originally they talked a lot about moving to SAT or ACT as a way of measuring progress, because that is an assessment that's already in place for a number of other things. That has morphed a little bit now, and now they're backing off of that conversation, but they have sent us some draft test item specs, which as we've had coaches begin to align the SAT blueprint and what is coming in those new test item specs, we are finding that those documents are very much in alignment. So take that for whatever it's worth. We do not have confirmation yet that that will be the thing, but we do see lots of similarities in the descriptions of how those tests are created. So that is your statewide assessment piece. So we're going to jump us forward now and talk a little bit about what's new with BEST in case you haven't heard these key features. I'm hoping you might get excited like I got when I saw some of these. So we're going to call this section New BEST for our PCSD BEST, because these are some of the things that we've heard teachers get really excited about as well. The first is these standards were created by leaders and teachers in Florida. And I'll give you a link to a DOE webpage in a few minutes where you can go back if you're so inclined and take a look at all of the work that the state did with their listening tours to really make sure that the public and Florida citizens, teachers, and leaders had a voice in the creation of these new standards. So that's the first thing to know. The other thing to know that I get really excited about is that these new standards include a really strong foundational focus for K2 students. You can see a shift in what DOE has been sharing as of the last 2 years or so, that it's clear that a lot of grant funding and a lot of focus is being put on catching kids younger who may have developing reading deficiencies and remediating at a much younger age in hopes of not having so many who get to 3rd grade with such big gaps. So you'll notice in these new standards in the K through 2 band, as well as all the way up into high school for students who may be in intensive reading, there's a strong focus on print concepts, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, and I'm going to add into that writing with their phonics learning. So learning to not only decode words, but encode those same words. So that is another big piece. The other thing is there's a large bulk of wording and research included with these standards that let us know that our focus, while it is focusing on these ELA benchmarks, there is also a strong focus on developing content knowledge deeper and over time for our youngest learners. There's a lot of research out there that supports that you help grow readers by making sure that they have lots of experience with a variety of different topics over time. And so you'll see as you dig into these standards that is a clear focus from the state in the development of these ELA standards specifically. The other thing to know, which may or may not be exciting to you, it's exciting to me, there's a big emphasis on social studies in ELA as well. So much so that there is now an included civics book literacy list along with the ELA standards. And just to help you all be aware, one thing that we have been doing as we are pulling together teachers in the K-2 band is we wrote some grants to get them some of the books from that civic book literacy list so that they had those materials in their classroom right along with their actual adopted curriculum. So this last time when they came together, every teacher left with a class set of multiple titles to help them with this endeavor to have more great rich text to help build that social studies content as well. And finally, there is a renewed focus on embedded handwriting print instruction in K2. And those of you who may have children my children's age, cursive is back in the standards. So hopefully our students will understand how to sign their signatures to forms. I watched my own child recently and I'm pretty excited about that one. It is very much in an embedded way. You'll start to notice with the new programs that along with the phonics piece in K through 2, this is a natural extension piece of that phonics program with OpenCourt. And as they move up into grades with Savish, you'll notice the same thing. So it's not that they're doing separate instruction, but as they write, it's encouraged and it's right there and embedded. There are lots of tools and tips and tricks for teachers and kids to really develop that piece. So we're excited about that as well. All right, let me see if I can progress. A few more of what's new in ELA and math. The strands of these standards were streamlined to be more consistent throughout. And some of you may or may not have had issues in the past with what are these math progressions? How are things really building upon one another? You'll notice in these new standards, these new best standards, that there is a much more thoughtful progression that goes from K all the way up through 12. And I'll add one more piece to this, which I hope to share with you one day very soon. On the math side of things, I don't often leave a math training saying I'm super excited, but I left a math training recently so excited and just singing the praises of the amazing folks from DOE. Because when you see what they have created for math standards to help teachers and parents, they're called, I'll give you a little preview, they're called the Big M documents. And they are documents that not only help teachers understand how to put standards together to teach, but they also provide them so many samples of these are some of the ways you might tackle this in the classroom. Here are a whole bunch of assessment items. If you're focused on teaming, here's some ideas of how to do that. It is more, in my 24 years in education, it's more than I've ever seen shared at a state level for a subject area. So I'm super excited to be able to bring you more on that later.
Will we have that in place next year?
The Big M?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, we're going to start introing that a little later this year. Principals just signed up at the secondary level to have a day with our math supporters at their school. So they're going to roll it out first with 7th and 8th and then 9th through 12th. We're starting with mathematical thinking and reasoning standards. They're the how, and then the Big M. And then as they shift into the summer, we'll do another Big Standards Institute, go deeper with them. But yes, we'll start that beginning learning of those this year for high school. And then elementary will start in the summer. Okay. Yep. The other thing to know is that the standards and benchmarks were written to be more clear and concise to ensure that they are easily understood by all stakeholders. If you've ever looked at the way some of the Florida standards were written, You may have walked away going, what in the world does that mean? And I'll tell you, some of our teachers did as well. Some of us did as well. And so please be aware that while they're more clear, clarity does not mean necessarily that they're simplified, right? The language is much clearer to help us understand what do you really want students to be able to do at the end of the instruction with the standard. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're easier standards. They're just much less wordy and a lot easier to define. I'll add another one about math. The math benchmarks were written to allow students the flexibility to solve problems using a method or strategy that they want to use, as long as that strategy gets them to an accurate answer, is generalizable, and is efficient with the new content. That's a shift. With the old standards, there were lots of specific ways we had to teach kids to solve certain problems. Now it's left more up to teacher and student discretion to say, I learned 4 different ways. This is the way I'm choosing. This is the way that works best for me. It's the most efficient. It gets me to the right answer. This is how I'm choosing to do it. So I know a lot of folks have been excited to see that piece coming to life. Just a few more, I promise. At times, benchmarks with these new standards may be combined purposefully for instruction. That's going to change lots of our ways of work moving forward. Now, we are not there yet. I'm going to say that very loud and clear. We're not there yet. We are a work in progress. But what this means is some of what you saw in the past, meaning in ELA, I'll give you that as an example. You may have noticed that in your child's ELA classroom, they focused on central idea, and maybe it was only central idea for 2 weeks of time, right? And then they got assessed on that standard at the end. With these new benchmarks, they are very much encouraging us to thoughtfully pair benchmarks together so that it's not a benchmark in isolation. And you may see they're learning this benchmark now with this level and this piece of text, and they're coming back to it again a little later in the year with a more advanced piece of text and an additional standard paired in there. So it's more recursive for ELA and for math, which those who are maybe your lovers of ELA and reading like I am, we're excited to see that come in because we know that that is necessary for really teaching children to read. So we're excited to have that in these new standards. I just said this, ELA and math may be addressed at multiple points throughout the year, and an appropriate progression of content within a grade band and across grade bands is being considered. In fact, you'll notice, and we'll bring you more on this later, but some of the course progressions and courses from DOE are being daggered at the end of this year to help prepare us for the shifts that need to happen with these new standards. So just know the whole system is changing, and it's changing kind of slowly, and we're going right along with it. We try to jump ahead when we can and pull in great PD for teachers to help them understand, but from DOE all the way down, it's a big system shift. So here's what I'm going to ask of you now. I'm going to take us to, we'll come back to that. I'm going to take us to a Mentimeter. So if you have a phone, I'm going to ask you to get your phone out, and you can do this 2 ways. You can either go use the QR code and just scan it, and it'll take you right to my Mentimeter little, it's not really a quiz. It's more of a way to get your input. We'll say that. Not a pop quiz, but way to gather input.
The internet's not that great here.
Is it not working?
The internet, we don't have Wi-Fi.
Oh, no.
Verizon.
How's it looking for others? It's trying.
Oh, no.
You're not Wi-Fi here.
Can we just brainstorm out loud?
We could just brainstorm out loud. So here's what I'm going to ask. I love it. I know. I try to embed my technology. Okay. That's right.
Well, actually, if we have, maybe if we have internet, we can do that too.
That's great.
So they can see
Yeah,
it.
so we'll do both. So if you are able to get on, I'm going to ask you to get on, and this includes my PCSD friends. I would love for you to share out what you heard as well. But I'm going to ask our parents and our community members as well to share out. So if you use the Mentimeter code,
Mine came up. Yep.
did it? Oh,
Yeah,
that'll take you
my school.
straight to this Mentimeter. Let me get it up and running right here.
And just put
so
your
you can
camera
see.
on the.
Is this something that we can participate and put our input in or is this like a live?
This one is a live one. The second one will be, you can do it after, but this one is a
Try, but it's
live.
not making it.
Yeah, but if you can't get on the internet, we can also do, you can just popcorn out if you like. Here's what I'm curious. Of what I just shared about best, you guys are quick. What you just heard about best standards, what are you most excited to hear? What about all those bullets that I just shared really leave you going, this is great. I'm excited about what this might mean for students. I see them starting to roll in, and you can see them live here as well. Progress monitoring in K through 8, the combining of standards made by teachers in Florida. I love that too. The alignment of resources, cursive, yes. As a mom who just watched my 22-year-old print on the bottom of a form, I'm excited about that as well. I am really excited about that. Lots of change. The standards are morphing. Great. Is there anyone in the room who's unable to get on the Mentimeter who would like to share one out for the good of the group? Yes.
I like, sticking with me is teachers, you're giving them the outcome you want and allowing them the freedom to teach it the way they can to their students that suits them. We're not following that strict.
Yes,
Rigorous.
specifically with the math, right? With the math, some of the ways of solving were very defined for us before, and now it's a little more flexible. Good, I'm glad to hear that.
So I thought I'd keep just adding, but.
Yeah, it only gives you.
Yeah, so we're limited. I said recursive and I like the new progression, especially for math. You know, I'm really interested in that one. But I love the clarity for the new standards, which I've already started to read and see poems comparing the old to the new and the flow in those. So I'm really excited about anything that helps our teachers have a clearer perspective of what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
And not just the teachers, but a parent and a student to be able to go in and read it on their own and take ownership over their learning.
Yes, I completely agree. Cute.
I'm excited about the focused learning that will go on with 0 to 3, because that is where our foundation starts. And that makes me so excited because our babies are geniuses in these little bodies that their bodies have not caught up to the capabilities of their brains. And now we're starting to focus on activating that.
Yes.
Love
So,
it.
You were the preschool lady
and
in
I
the last
couldn't
meeting,
get my,
right?
yes, I couldn't get my internet to work. So that's probably.
Great. No, that was great. Thank you so much. And you know, I love words. You're a good company here. I am so thankful to see all of your thoughts about this, from early remediation to the handwriting piece to the newness that's coming with math. That's just great. So I'm gonna switch our gears a little bit, and now I'm gonna ask you a question that is gonna start leading us into another conversation, because this is the second biggest topic. This is the thing that I promise you, when I'm buying my tomatoes, I'm gonna get caught and ask about this every time. So I'm gonna pose the question to you. Here we go. Here's my question. And it's just a true or false, or an I'm not sure, and I'm not sure is a perfectly acceptable answer. Can I just say that? Because there are days when I'm not sure. Here's the question. True or false? Textbooks guide the instruction that occurs in our classroom.
I know the answer to this. Oh, is this cheated? Mine's not pulling it. Hold on. I know the answer to this one. It's not letting me.
Okay. I must say, I'm pleasantly surprised by the number of false responses and the number of I'm not sure's. And believe me, 24 years in, and I totally understand that response of I'm not really sure. So let's switch our conversation and talk a little bit about textbooks and this question. Because it's one thing for us to say that is false, and those of you who said that is false or I'm not sure, you are right on the money. It is false, and I'm not sure. And I'll say this, even those of you who said it's true, in some instances, wrong or right, it can be true. But that doesn't mean it should be true. And let me explain to you why that shouldn't be true. And this may help understand and clarify some of the questions that I've got. So remember how I showed you this? These are when the standards became adopted and got implemented. One thing that I don't know if we do a great job of communicating is how our adoption cycles work together with the standards implementation cycle. And if you have the great pleasure of knowing any of our teachers in the learning community, they may tell you, Jen will get on the soapbox about publishing companies, and I will, and I'm so sorry, but I do. And it is because I know the truth with publishing companies. While they try to do the very best they can with the guidance that they get, right? And there is a state process. At the end of the day, I have seen enough great and not great programs to know that when a publishing company creates a national product, while they may then turn around and stamp Florida on the front of it, that does not mean that they have actually changed anything at the heart of that product. Now, we are lucky to have some great people in place at the state level who help us navigate how do we figure that out? How do we really look at these and pick the best of what's out there, knowing what we know that I'm about to share with you? They do a great job of that, but even with the help that they provide, the system is not in total alignment. Let me show you why I say that. Okay, so in 1996, 2005, we get these new standards. Take a look at the adoption cycles. What do you notice? So in 2005, we adopted Next Generation Sunshine State Standards. We then morphed, and when I tell you that this was a total change, it was the biggest shift that I think I've been in education my whole career. So we shifted from Next Generation to Common Core, but what do you notice about our textbook adoption cycle?
They don't align. They don't have an opportunity to. You're already in.
We'd already bought it for the other.
You're already adopted.
They don't align. We just bought the textbooks for the other standards, and then things shift, right? And so you can see that, and I'm taking you back, I'm taking you on a little journey, and I'm gonna bring us forward in time a little bit. Here again, what do we notice happens?
Same thing. You have to buy the books and then you have a new standards.
Same thing. So this is why we say the textbook alone, please know that, parents. I don't know if we do a great job of saying that, but I want to make sure that everybody who comes to PIDAC is very clear on why this is the case. Why we tell our teachers, I'm so sorry, you can't just open it and go through, because it is not in total alignment with what the state is now telling you you have to teach. So when we start talking about planning instruction, I'll come back to this. When we start talking about planning instruction, we encourage our teachers to use multiple things, but you'll notice the first thing on the list is the standards or benchmarks, because depending on the subject, you may have both or you may only have one. So standards or benchmarks and other FLDOE documents. Now, when I say other documents, I mean things like, if I'm a tested subject, I'm going to go look at my test item specifications. You better believe it. If I teach third grade readers, I'm going to go look and see, what does the state say they're going to test them on at the end of the year? So I'm going to look at my benchmarks, and I'm going to use that to help me go, okay, but what does that look like? You told me what the standards were, but what does it look like? Where do I find that? The test item specs. So the new ones are not released yet publicly, but the ones currently should be on the DOE web. You'll find it perfect. She'll send it to you. Yeah, they're online for folks, for anybody to pull. And there's an FSA, an old FSA practice test site that has some item specs there as well. So we encourage our teachers first to look at the benchmarks. What does the state say you must instruct for? And then what does the state say kids need to be able to do with this at the end to demonstrate their proficiency with these standards? The second thing we do is, in our district, I'm so fortunate. I'm like the most fortunate person on the planet in this role, because I'm lucky to be surrounded by great coaches and great supporters. Those supporters and our teachers Now, it's not always all teachers. We do invites. Sometimes schools recommend teachers, but we do have educator input. They sit together at the end of each year and they say, what do we need to take off of our year at a glance or put onto our year at a glance? What do we need to reshape because it didn't work for us last year, et cetera. And they sit together and they pace these standards out. They say, these things around these times. Now, I will be the first one to say, we don't always get it right. And then you'll notice right now, there's one grade level or one subject that's not on our website available. And part of that reason is because we have a group of teachers looking at the 6th grade social studies with us. And we're very adamant, we don't want to just do that for them or feel like it's being done to me, because sometimes it feels like it's being done to me. We want their voice in it. So they're working to finish that guide out with our social studies folks through the end of the year. So that one's not up, but you'll notice the other ones are there, and I'll show you how to get those in just a moment. But they sit down with the standards and that, and then we go through our district adopted textbooks and resources. Now that process, it is not right. Remember, I started this saying, thank teachers. You really got to thank our teachers, because our teachers then, along with our coaches, have to look at their materials and go, what of this fits what I now am responsible for teaching? What of this does not? What do I need to get rid of? What do I need to keep? And that is a big process. And so we're thankful to have so many people to help guide them through that. But no matter how many people you have, that is a big undertaking. But it all goes back to state timelines. Does that make sense? If you change standards and it's not an adoption year, and I'm about to show you what's happened with BEST as well, when you change standards like that and your adoption cycle doesn't match, you of course are going to end up with materials that don't fully align, right? 2 state processes that don't align. I'm going to add one more piece to this. The other thing we do to help teachers through this, and we don't do it for everyone, I'll show you who we do this for, but we do learning communities. We pull teachers together throughout the year and we say, come on, we're going to be here with you. We're going to go through this together. We're going to plan out units together with everybody who teaches the same thing as you teach and the coaches, school-based and district. We're going to go through this muddiness and messiness together. We try to do that 3 times a year for most groups. Some groups get 4 to 5. It just depends on the need and how significant the gap is between the benchmark and the resources, kind of guides our time with that. They also get support at the school level. So we have most schools have a school-based coach, but not all schools. Those that don't have a district coach who comes out to support now. And so we're excited to have that in place this year to give people more consistency in coaching support as well, so that teachers really have a lifeline as they're doing this work to go, come help me. How do I make sense of this? And what do I need to use versus what do I need to toss out? So I'm going to go back one more slide. I'm going to show you this one first. For those who are wondering what's coming next, we do have math this year. Be looking in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll have our math adoption cycle plan up on our teaching and learning page. You'll notice if you go there right now, it is still ELA. And that is intentional because, again, you had to wait for the first steps from the state to start down the math process. And I will add, with the standards being in place for next year, but the adoption of the materials for those standards happening this year, you're probably already imagining some gaps that may be in place, right? So we've started with the team of people who we've sent to state trainings, which is a small team. They'll go to the NEFAC Instructional Materials Fair, and actually that's coming up next week, I think. And I'll go with them as well. We'll go to that fair, we'll look through materials. Anything that is not on the state board approved list, we automatically tag at that fair and go, nope, we're not having follow-up conversation because you haven't met even this minimum requirement from the state to get on their short bid list or their adoption list. Those that are, will begin conversations with them and start scheduling presentations for school-based teams. Now that will be a nomination process. We do leave that up to principals to say, who from your team is going to represent which one of these grade bands. And we encourage them to use things like student data, their efficacy to help determine who those initial people will be. They'll come and help us narrow down the selection. So that larger group will bring it down to a couple of choices. With ELA, we left that process with 3 choices, and then we sent it out to everyone. It said, here are the links, go explore, everyone. Here is your opportunity. We also sent it out to the community via the webpage and said, anybody who wants to give feedback, give feedback. Once all the feedback was collected, then we came back with that initial team and we said, we got to make a decision. Let's categorize what was negative, what was positive in the feedback. What's our rationale? Okay, what are we going to propose? What are we going to go propose to the board? And then starts the board process in all of this and the community feedback option and all those other pieces. So we do get feedback all along the way, but I will tell you, because of the way these standards have rolled out, they have altered our process a little bit in that we are starting with those who have had the training for the new standards as a first line of, you look at these materials first, because we just have not had a chance to do everybody because of how the state's rolling the standards trainings out. Does that make sense? So we do the best we can with the parameters that we've given. We try to give lots of mechanisms for people to give feedback, but it does leave us with imperfect products, right? They're just imperfect. Some of them are great and better than others, but some of them are a little lacking. So the standards and benchmarks and other DOE documents, most of them can be found here. And I'll send this to Melissa's team after so she can push it out to those who attended today so you can have this. And the links are all hyperlinked, so you can go straight there. The PCSD.
Ms. Michael sends out that folder to y'all. We'll put it on there.
Oh, perfect. The PCSD website, let me show you what that looks like, just so that you can become familiar with the way our teaching and learning pages look. So from the main website, when you're on the front page and you can hit that top bar and get all the options, our department is called Teaching and Learning. And so on the Teaching and Learning page, you'll notice there's stuff here for professional learning and growth. That's where we tell teachers, how do you get points for in-service for things you've attended. We also have the information about the reading endorsement, tech tools, you name it, all kinds of things. But here, under the specific subject areas, you can scroll and get a sense of what are we really focusing on right now, what transitions are coming. Please know that this is our Read K-12 plan from last year. Our newest one hasn't been published from DOE yet. As soon as it is, we'll get the new link here so you can see this year's plan. But here where it says access grade level PCSD year at a glance documents, you can click these links and they will take you straight to the grade levels of that band. So you can see anything that's in its, at least in a version where we feel really comfortable with sharing where we are, is here. And right now that's all ELA, all of the core math through algebra, I believe, science through biology, and social studies through US history.
Except 6th grade.
Except for 6th grade. Yes, that's the work in progress, except 6th grade. So you will not find that for social studies here, but you'll find the other ones. And so for each one of our pages, you can see down the left-hand side, you've got ELA, math, science, social studies. So if you ever want to see what the district says in terms of what should be the focus right now about how many days, et cetera, that's there. Now, please know that we know that the reality of the classroom means sometimes teachers will go a little bit over that, or they may have adapted things slightly. It's where we see huge variance that we sometimes get concerned, because we want to help teachers make sure that they have instructed all benchmarks before the end of the year. And sometimes we slow it so much that then we don't finish our content for the year. So the year at a glance documents are meant to be a guide of what this unit of study should look like and what happens daily. That's where they have a little bit more autonomy. How am I going to make this work for my kids? So they have a frame, and then within that frame, they plug in the details, if that makes sense. So you will also see down here there's some information about the best standards. The timeline is here. There's a link here that you can select as well to get more information from the DOE site about that. But we tried to make that just an easier transition for you. And I'll say, I want to thank this group because getting those reposted in a way that was easier to find was a direct result of some feedback we got from the PIDAC group. And we're so appreciative of that. I've already had so many people reach out and say, I noticed that you did this, thank you, it's so much easier to find. And so we appreciate that feedback. So let's talk learning communities really quickly. For those of you who are wondering what in the world that is, and I'll be super fast with this, but just so you can get a visual, because sometimes it's helpful to see what it looks like. These are our most recent ones. This is the K2 ELA group. And when they come together for these learning communities, you can see by these pictures, we do a mixture of things. Sometimes we engage them in strategies that we hope to see them turn around and implement in the classroom. So this was an example of a summary math activity that we had our teachers go through and experience as a student and react to, and then they thought about how would I or wouldn't I use this in my own classroom. They also do things like present to one another. We have teachers who volunteer and say, you know, at this time, I'm going to share out this strategy. I've gotten a lot of feedback from a coach. I feel really good about this. And they'll get up and take a leading role and share out whatever that thing was. We have them sit together and plan together. So this is some of that guided coach planning time where you have peers who teach the same thing as you and a district-based coach at this particular table sitting together, doing the work of planning. This is the Interlochen Mosley combo team. They got together at the last learning community and planned out 3 weeks of instruction for their kids. And you can see these smiles. They were so thrilled to have an opportunity to collaborate across school. Because sometimes you don't know what your counterparts in another part of the district are doing. And very frequently we hear from teachers, like, that was the best learning I could have done because I didn't realize that Mikey was doing this in 4th grade over in Crescent City. I have only thought about this like this. So that was so helpful. And I'll add one more piece. These are some of their notes. At the end of the session, we asked them to shout out a colleague who really pushed on their professional thinking during that day. And then we give the person that they shouted out a prize. And so this time, I could have given you a million examples. I left crying, feeling so just moved by their feedback to one another. But these are just a couple of people who said, I appreciated Stephanie modeling. And I'll tell you, in the middle of this session, this teacher was like, oh, I'm just going to show you. I can't explain it. Give me the text. She picked up the text, and for her little group, she was like, hey, you act like you're my kids. And this is how I would do this. And she stood up and just modeled this whole, not a lot, like 7 minutes of time. And those teachers walked away going, holy cow, that was worth the ride. Like that right there, seeing this other teacher do that and not only explain it, but show me, made all the difference. And it's everything from, you shared a great graphic organizer I never thought of to this. So these are the groups we serve through our learning communities. It's not just ELA, although you can tell that that is my background and that's where I have a big comfort zone. So you'll notice that with the ELA, there are a few more. I try to lead most of those. But we also have math, science, and social studies for varying grade levels. Again, a lot of this is dependent on the teacher. We don't typically, there are some occasions where we say this is mandatory, but with learning communities, we encourage, but we try not to force because we like having the people there who want to be there. It makes the group just go so much smoother. I will tell you that in this last round, we had every school pretty much represented except for one grade level, and that was COVID related. So we have had these great teachers together in the room, and the feedback they have shared has been wonderful. Yes.
I understand why science and social studies don't have learning communities prior to 5th grade, 6th grade.
Yes.
Why doesn't math? Why is it 7th on up?
Yeah, so they have in the past. The reason we didn't do that this year is because we knew in our K2 grades that they had all the ELA best
coming and we didn't want to overwhelm them with additional sessions.
Sixth grade math, for example.
Yeah, that I'll say only because of time and
But normally
resources
there
and
would be,
making.
this just happened to be this year.
Yeah, this year they're not, these do change yearly. I will share that. These change yearly based on data and based on teacher feedback. We do have some years where teachers give us a lot of feedback and say, not this year. We had enough last year, we're good, let it, we'll do other things, but not this year and bring it back.
But math
Biology is a great
teachers-
example of that.
Math teachers can participate in the ELA training.
Well, Elementary school, generally they are. At the elementary school, they're very frequently, especially in the younger grades, the same people. And so when those people started down the path of new ELA standards, we made a bit of a decision. And again, I know there's a lot of messiness here, but not being able to do it all and not wanting our teachers to feel like, now I have to leave my kids for these 3 days, which is great, but now you're layering 3 more days on me and you want me to start this now too.
So maybe
We just
next
opted
year
not
when
to.
math is adopted,
Oh, yeah.
there'll be more.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you'll see a lot more math next year. One of the big, I should have probably said that to begin with. A lot of the reason for more ELA this year too is because we shifted to ELA first. So next year you will see a lot more math on this and you'll see in the summer more math sessions as well. This past summer, you saw more ELA for that very reason, because we knew we needed to shift people there first. But this is ever changing. And I will tell you, even sometimes mid-year, we have groups who go, we weren't meeting, we didn't think it was a need, and now we're in December, and please, can you please get us 2 dates on before we have our EOC, because we really need this. And we try to be as responsive as we possibly can. But I want to add, this is not the only support they receive. They also have, and I want to thank our federal programs leaders and Laura for this, because our district has made these supporter positions a clear priority. And we keep a lot of data about that. So we're very aware of who and how we're spending our time. And we try to prioritize as much as possible so that this is not the only support teachers get. They also get it at their school with just their school-based people as well, with a district coach added into that mix. This is just one mechanism to help. All right, the last thing I'm going to do, we were going to go through Sabbath, but I want to really quickly, and I know my time is up, but I have some handouts. Laura's going to pass these out to you. We have a new program in K through 2. And this program is super exciting to me, because it does something that I have never seen done in an ELA program before. In this particular program, which is called Benchmark Advance, and remember that we're currently using it in K2 for the new best standards, but we are going to be moving forward using it also in 3rd through 6th grade. This program creates units of study that are 3 weeks long, and there are 10 units, and those units, if you look down the left-hand column of the page, address tons of different topics: social studies, science. You'll see some that are just pure literary, some are more like social emotional learning topics, etc. The great thing about this, from my perspective, is that over time, I think having these units in place across a school campus in every grade will help us be more targeted in things like, what are we doing in after school to extend the learning about this topic? If everyone is on this topic, how do we use or maximize our resources to make sure we're all in line with that topic? It also may help us do things like mobilize our community experts. How might you pull in a guest speaker to talk about this thing, record it and share it with all schools so that kids start learning, like, who in my community has a role in this? What does this look like? And so I'm hopeful that you guys might be willing to provide me with a little bit of feedback and some ideas around this. So I've included a bit.ly link with this presentation. This doesn't have to be done now. I know we're pretty much out of time, but I do want to beg of you to take a few minutes after the session and go into this bit.ly link. There's a survey, and I've asked questions like, here are the 10 unit topics. Do you know an expert? Are you an expert? Do you, what are my other ones? One is, I have an idea for a virtual or face-to-face field trip around this particular topic. I don't have an idea to share at this time. I have an idea for a parent night around this topic, etc. And then you'll notice once you get into that Google form and you scroll down, there's a place where you can elaborate. And I've chunked them out by unit topic. So you'll see 10 different boxes. None of them are required answers. So answer what you want, let go of what you don't want. Okay, I'm fine with that. But what I'm hoping is that this group can help me build some ideas out for our district around how do we make sure that with this great resource, this new benchmark topic focusing, how do we make sure that we're aligning all of our system to really dig in deep with kids, give them lots of extension activities, thoughts about careers in regards to some of these things, etc. Another important thing to know is that while some of these are addressed, some of these unit topics are addressed in the ELA block, some are also carried over into social studies and science block. If it's a social studies topic, you will see it built into our social studies year at a glance in the form of research and inquiry projects, which we're also very excited about. So I think that this could mean some really great real life experiences for our kids, but I need your help and your input to guide me in what are those things? Who are the people in Melrose and Crescent City and here in the central location? Where are the places we should be thinking about virtual field trips to or real life field trips to in our local area, etc. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. So with that, that is my time. I want to thank you guys. I'm so sorry I went over a little bit. I have too many words. I get excited. I have too many words. Thank you so much.
Okay, so just because, of time and everything, I just wanted to thank you guys again for coming. And I wanted to let you know on the table, for those of you that weren't here at the first meeting, there is a copy in English and Spanish of the Parent-Family Engagement Plan for the district. It is also housed at each of your schools. If you ever want a copy of it, they have a copy at every school. So that is on the back table. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. But because of time, I'm not going to go through the plan, but it is available back there for you guys for English and Spanish. So if you have any other questions, feel free to write it on a sticky note. Any suggestions, make sure you use our parking lot, and feel free to go enjoy some more food and something to drink. And thank you again for being here. Thank you.